Hi, I'm Kat Kalashian for Live and Invest Overseas, and today we're talking about retirement in Panama. So, Panama has for so long been one of the most popular destinations in the Americas for retirees and for anybody looking for a fresh start south of the border. But just what does this little nation have to offer, and what are the pros and cons of a life in retirement there specifically? So, first, let's look at why Panama is a hot retirement spot in general. One of the main draws for many people is the low cost of living. You can cut your living expenses by as much as 50% here. I've spoken with many people who have over the years. Everything from food to real estate comes at a much lower cost here. And although prices have increased in recent years, owing to its growing popularity largely, life in Panama is still such a bargain when compared, especially to the US. And when you factor in the fact that you're living a seaside lifestyle or a luxury lifestyle on a golf course, etc. So always remember to compare apples to apples, even if the Panama lifestyle doesn't necessarily seem as cheap as you think it might have been. You have to always keep in mind the level of lifestyle that you're getting in exchange for that cost of living. So with all of that said, your cost of living here could well be under $1,500 a month. This would be a simple but fully appointed lifestyle. And that's in most of the country's interior. The interior is generally what locals call anything outside of the city or any outside of any of the big cities. So David or Boquete, really anything in the middle. So when we speak about the interior, we're talking about rural lifestyle, village lifestyle, small town, beachside, coast side. These are the lifestyles we're looking at. In the city or in the popular expat havens like Boquete in the mountains, for example, you could easily spend double that or more depending on your lifestyle choices. But again, it does all come down to budgeting and lifestyle choices. So it is very controllable once you get there and realize where you want to spend more money and where you might want to scrimp and save. Healthcare is another thing that is excellent and also very affordable here. A doctor's visit in Panama City would run you about $50. The clinic that I went to my entire life in Panama was $25 a visit. I think they've gone up to $30 since I moved away. Still very affordable. And as I say, the standard of care is very high quality, particularly in the private hospitals. And Panama City actually happens to be home to Hospital Punta Pacifica, which is the only hospital in Latin America affiliated and managed by the Johns Hopkins Medicine International conglomerate. And then outside of the city, you'll have small clinics that are available pretty ubiquitously. They can handle your everyday ailments. And every doctor I've ever met in Panama was always very friendly and helpful. Many speak English. Many also went to school and or trained in the US or Canada, and as a result speak English because they lived there. So some of the healthcare and health concerns that people might have about moving overseas are really null and void when we're talking about Panama City, especially, and even the rest of Panama. So if you're on the other side of the coast, let's say you decide to live in Boquete, because there's a huge expat presence there, there is a good clinic there as well. And David is the nearest city, which would have a big full-scale hospital. So some other pros that attract people, probably a really obvious one, is the great tropical climate. So if you're into beaches and warm weather and sun year-round, then Panama is a great choice. What's notable, though, is that it's actually outside of the hurricane belt. So if you love the idea of a Florida or a Caribbean lifestyle, you can have that in Panama and not have the risk of living in a place that might flood a few times a year or that might be in a hurricane path during those seasons. The average annual temperatures throughout Panama are from 77 to 82, especially in the city and along the coasts. And in the highlands, you can expect it to be much cooler. We often refer to it as spring-like temperatures of around 63 to 70, and those are pretty year-round. It'll feel colder when it's raining or after dark, but you're never going to need anything more than a little rain jacket. The local currency here is the US dollar, which makes it relocation really simple for those coming from the US who then won't have to concern themselves with the exchange rates or transferring funds or anything like that. The country is also very economically stable thanks to the Panama Canal and as well thanks to its friendly tax policies that have made Panama City a base for so many multinational corporations from around the world, which brings in more and more foreigners living and working there. And and makes the country even more stable. The capital is very cosmopolitan. It's, as I say, home to lots of expats from all over the world, very diverse backgrounds. And here you'll really find every first world amenity and comforts of home that you might want. You'll find American imports in the grocery stores, especially in the city, but even also in the interior. You'll find, hardware stores, big box stores. You'll find furniture stores, the internet, the electricity. They're all pretty stable in the city. And the culture is pretty familiar for many Americans because of the former US presence. They were in Panama for 100 years or so. And the fact that the Panama Canal is still there with its little Americanized zone around it means that American culture is pretty familiar. And so it feels familiar, both for you as the person coming in and for the locals who are used to Americans coming in. So as I say, the infrastructure is of a high standard. This is a place where things generally work: the internet, the TV, the phones, etc. These are actually the most reliable in the whole region. So in Central America, things can be a little bit hit and miss, but in Panama, things are pretty stable. The roadways and highway systems are constantly being expanded and improved. You'll find banks and ATMs in every corner on the city. I will say, though, big asterisks on all of this, the ground infrastructure. And when I say that, I mean the sidewalks, the streets, the drainage in the streets. Those are things that are still lacking, especially in the city. Mostly, I would say, because it's had such a boom of population that happened so quickly that it wasn't able to keep up its infrastructure with the number of new cars on the road, for example. So you might not love the streets in Panama City. You might not want to walk on those streets every day. I can assure you that things are better. For example, Boquete has some nice walking streets, and villages and little beach towns they may be dirt paths, but they're, perfectly serviceable dirt paths. But everything electronics wise is pretty reliable. Panama City is also an international travel hub, so it's highly accessible, especially from North America. Flights from Florida, for example, are just about 3.5 hours. I can get there direct to Panama City from my home in Paris, where I am now, and it makes for a very easy, comfortable travel situation in that part of the world. So let's talk about the lifestyles that you might have. I've alluded to these already. So outside of the capital, you can really take your pick of the bustling beach towns, mountain escapes, the rural retreats, and the long established expat havens. Panama has 2 long coasts, one with crashing Pacific waves that are home to some of the best surf breaks in the world, the other with crystal Caribbean waters, some of the best diving in the world, and countless islands on both sides that are fun to explore by boat or just to hang out on. And this little isthmus also brims with rainforests and jungles, teeming with all manner of beautiful and exotic wildlife. Panama is home to more than 940 species of birds, 220 mammals, and 354 reptiles and amphibians. About 30% of the country's land is protected in national parks, forest reserves, and wildlife reserves. There's also a nice range of quick and easy residency options, including the gold standard Pensionado visa, one of the most accessible and generous visa programs in the world. The basic requirements are just to be over 18, to earn $1,000 per month at least, to have a clean criminal record, get a health certificate issued by a local doctor saying that you're generally in good health and no pre-existing conditions will prevent you from coming in, really. And that you file your application through a lawyer in Panama. And that's it. Through that, you can get your visa here. You can also get by without speaking Spanish. I don't recommend it, but especially in Panama City and in certain of the expat enclaves, such as Boquete or Bocas del Toro, you really don't need to learn Spanish if you don't want to, or if you think that you wouldn't be able to. Add to all of that Panama is a pretty safe country to live in. Panamanians are very friendly. There are policemen who, patrol the tourist-heavy areas. So in Panama City, it's very common to see armed policemen riding by on a motorcycle or walking along the Cinta Costera. The dedicated tourist police, for example, which also patrol in these areas, are able to chat in English with visitors and are instructed just to make sure that visitors stay safe. So what you might need to concern yourself with are just muggings and burglaries. Those are the most common crimes for really in most parts of the world. So be aware of those and minimize your exposure with proper security and prevention, and you should be fine. How many Americans retire in Panama? Well, the country has a population of about 4 million, 4.4, and some 20 or 30,000 of them are said to be U.S. expats. The concentrations are in Panama City, the city beaches area, which is Coronado, Gorgona, Chame even, and that whole area, Rio Hato. And the mountain town of Boquete is Panama's probably the best known expat haven. It's home to around 25,000 people, around 5,000 of whom are expats. So a big ratio there. So Panama, as you're seeing, really is a pensioner's paradise. It is a place that showers retirees with exclusive perks like tax waivers, duty-free imports, and up to 50% discounts on most of your bills. And I'm about to tell you more about all of those little retiree perks in detail. But first, I want to invite you to join our team in Panama, along with 100 or more of your fellow readers this January, as our local experts detail how best to take advantage of all of that Panama has to offer. Over 3 days of expert sessions, discussion panels, expert consultations, and social activities with more than 100 other people who are interested in living and investing in Panama, you'll get to know the real country, the good and the bad, and get to know what living here would be like for you. You'll learn about all the country's regions for adventure, for investment, or for living, along with the professionals who work here and the retirees who already live here. You'll get an in-depth view of Panama that outsiders, tourists, and the internet researchers that tend to fill up the space could never access on their own. And you'll leave with the knowledge, support, and confidence that you need to make the important decisions about your future in Panama. You can find out more at the link on your screen, and I hope that we will see you there. So without further ado, let's recap. Panama, popular retirement destination, lower cost of living, great lifestyle options, welcoming locals, established expat communities, great healthcare, modern comforts, warm, sunny climate, and the Pensionado residency program, which offers some really, really great retiree discounts. So let's get into that real quick. Everything from your restaurant tab to movie tickets to plane fares to prescription medications have these great retiree benefits involved for pensioners. So it includes duty-free import of your household goods and a vehicle, 50% off movies, concerts, and other entertainment, 30% off travel fares, planes, boats, trains, or buses, 50% off hotel stays, 20% off healthcare bills and prescriptions, 20% off professional and technical services, 50% off closing costs for home loans, 25% off utility bills, and discounts on personal loans, mortgages, and more. Plus, you can skip to the front of the line just about anywhere from the grocery store to the bank. It's a small thing, but many people say it's one of their favorite perks of living in Panama as a pensionado or a retiree. They get to just cut to the front of the line and show their little card to get up there. And as I've mentioned, the locals are so friendly and welcoming, but the stable, relatively drama-free government, which is pro-business and foreigner-friendly, is a huge plus. You know, Panama really stands out as a top choice for property investment, which many retirees consider as a way to boost their nest egg. So it's a nice little benefit there. And key local developers here have long track records spanning decades, meaning you can feel confident when you're buying here. And right now, they are a little bit more open and flexible and creative in financing rates and plans than they have been in a long time. So now is a great time to be looking at Panama if you are thinking about some kind of investment like that. So we've talked about all of the pros. Let's consider some of the cons. For some, the climate could be considered a con. If you hate humidity, then Panama pretty much should be struck off your list unless you're looking to live up in the highlands. Panama has 2 seasons. The dry is from December to April, and the rest of the year, which is the rainy season, and it peaks in October and November. So during those months, you might see rain every single day. And during this time, you can really expect heavy downpours. They usually don't last more than 20 minutes, an hour max, but you have to plan for them. And it may be more of a hassle than you're willing to put up with. Then the dry season, those temperatures can soar in the city. So for those looking for the cooler climates, you really should look at those mountain regions where the temperatures are lower year round. I will just point out that I loved the thunderstorms in Panama. It was one of my favorite things about living there. So I really loved the rainy season. I have great memories of watching storms roll in from my balcony and being in my apartment and having the storm just pound on all the windows around us. So if you like thunderstorms, this is a place for epic thunderstorms, and I highly recommend them. And so I mentioned that the healthcare in private hospitals and in the capital is excellent, but there is a lack of options. There's a lack of availability in more rural areas. So if you need to be close to top tier medical facilities, then Panama City or Chitre should be your targets. Chitre is the rapidly developing capital of the Herrera province. So if those are your home bases, then you should be okay. Otherwise, it's you should do some serious research about where you would feel comfortable living, medically speaking. In Panama City, the traffic, and also I would say the city beaches, is a definite con. The exploding middle class meant a lot more people in cars than the city could handle. The streets have remained narrow, the parking is limited, traffic jams are epic as the thunderstorms, which flood the streets, which make it impossible for traffic to get through sometimes. And be aware, as I mentioned, even at the beaches, if you are traveling on a holiday weekend, hour-long waits to get in or out of the city from those beach destinations. Your best bet for getting around the city if you don't want to own your own car is Uber or Cabify, rideshare programs. It's very hot to walk around or wet, depending on the season. And as I mentioned, the infrastructure on the sidewalks where they are present is it can be hit and miss. The mañana attitude here could be a pro if you're looking to slow down and enjoy a more relaxed way of life. But if you're used to getting things done rapidly in your own way, on your own timeline, you may struggle with this. Nobody in Panama is in much of a hurry to do anything, so the best advice is to slow down, try and go with the flow. And if that's not you, maybe Panama isn't for you either. The language barrier could also be an issue. You can get by in English in the city and places like Coronado or Boquete, but to live well, build your social circle, you would really need to learn Spanish. Depending on where you live, the noise could also be another con here. Locals love to party. It's not unusual for music to be blaring or fireworks to pop off on holidays at any time at all, middle of the day, middle of the night. In more rural areas, it might be things like barking dogs or crowing roosters that disturb you. So, do some due diligence in each specific place that you're thinking of living. And finally, the pests. This is the tropics. There are spiders, cockroaches, mosquitoes, snakes, scorpions, caimans, and other pests that abound, even in the city to a certain extent. And once you leave the capital, these critters will be part of your daily life. So get used to them. And if you have a serious phobia, again, Panama as interior may not be for you. So let's talk a little bit more about the Panama Pensionado Visa. This is the best option, not just for retirees, but really for anyone over the age of 18 who has a pension, either private or government, of at least $1,000 a month. And so that means if you're on Social Security, you can easily qualify. The minimum pension is $1,000 for a single plus $250 for each dependent. So a married couple would be $1,250 a month. Another option for retirees is the Golden Visa, which allows you to invest $300,000 in real estate or a bank CD and apply for residency that way. And so finally, to wrap things up, who should consider living in Panama? There is such a wealth of choices catering to almost every taste. If you like the big city conveniences, the plush condos, modern comforts, and a host of entertainment options, you'll find all of that in Panama City and as well on the city beaches increasingly in these communities, these gated communities for golf or high-rise condos. If you're a nature lover and you prefer a quieter pace of life, then mountain towns like Boquete or a beachside retreat like Pedasí could be your speed. Or you could opt to homestead in a little rural escape like my family has out at our Los Islotes Ranch. It's a 250-acre finca in the little explored Veraguas province. It takes a while to get there, but once you do, you never want to leave. Whether you want a vibrant, action-packed retirement in a fast-paced city, a place where you can escape the world and get back to basics, or a midway point with the old-fashioned feel plus modern comforts, you can find it all and more in Panama. I encourage you, if Panama sounds like your kind of retirement, I can't urge you strongly enough to take a look at joining us this January on the ground for our once-a-year Live and Invest in Panama conference that will give you the golden key to this wonderful little country. And don't forget to like us and subscribe for more videos like this every week from Live and Invest Overseas. Happy trails.